there's a part of your brain called the default mode network, which is the one area or the specific areas of your brain which are activated when you are bored. Now, boredom is defined as a state of wakeful rest where you're not particularly focused on anything and are simply existing, letting your thoughts flow, right? And what happens in this state of boredom, as you very well may know, is you remember some memories of yours, very likely bad ones, or perhaps some good ones here and there. You project into the future as to what it will look like. So people are very uncomfortable with that because they don't know what the future will look like. And hence, that's exactly why they should go towards it. Or other than that, they see or think about situations which they could have approached differently, or perhaps start having urges or anything else related to this minor or even major addiction. So, for example, cravings or anything else. And this idea that boredom is negative is one of the biggest psyops, is one of the biggest psychological operations that I've seen. Because if you see anyone who's at a high level of performance, whether it be in terms of spirituality, intellect, or even a person who is competing in physical tournaments and whatnot, like sports or wrestling or anything else, they employ boredom to make sure that they have optimal performance. Now, what I define as the default mode network, what the default mode network is something which is activated in a lot of activities which people who are again at the top of the games have employed. So this is something like visualization, wherein you aren't doing anything, you aren't actually doing anything, and you're thinking about something specifically, you're projecting into the future as to what it will look like, right? And that is a visualization technique which a lot of athletes use, and people have found out that if you first visualize something, whether it be in terms of sports or anything else, and then act it out in your physical reality, you will find that you have better results overall compared to people who just act it out, or compared to people who just visualize it, right? We need a mix of both. Or there's people who meditate. Generally, people who meditate have slightly better mental health than the average of people and also have better brain health, right? So this is again another way in which people who are activating the default mode network and actually having a relationship with it, actually are not running away from it, tend to have better outcomes. Same with people who journal. Journaling, especially if you're doing something wherein you have given your brain a prompt like, I want to solve this problem, give me like 20 possible solutions for this, and your brain just starts thinking of things, and then you just free write it, or perhaps even just a free thought, free flow thought type of journaling wherein you have just a pen and paper and you're writing down your thoughts as they come, and then you can later look at them and see what your flow of consciousness produced. I talk about all of this because these are the ways that people who are again at the top of their games, whether it be philosophers or researchers or psychologists or anything else, have came about knowledge, came about wisdom, and actually processed it, synthesized it into something good. They have given their brain some food, and then they've given the brain some area, some rest, some respite to digest it. And that is what a lot of people lack. So, for example, people who don't think, people who don't activate the default mode network a lot, do not know their purpose, do not know how future outcomes will be, do not actually look into what kind of actions they will have, do not visualize a future wherein they see that they do something and then act it out, because they are just too busy consuming, they are too busy sleeping, they are too busy eating, they are too busy being in the present moment in all of the worst ways, because they're disassociating from their actual reality. They are either focusing on something else, they're focusing on this, focusing on that, never focusing on the thoughts. Why? Because thoughts are scary. Because boredom is something negative clearly, and I must consume and consume and consume until I feel whole again, but I never will. So the way I've been applying this is by three methods, and the first is meditation. You may say that meditation doesn't work for you, but that's exactly the point. The fact that you've been avoiding your thoughts for a long time, of course, means that they're a little uncomfortable. So when you start sitting with them, you firstly realize that they are thoughts, right? Meditation to me is like opening a relationship with them, opening communications with them, and actually having some dialogue, having some discourse, and also understanding that, okay, My brain is an organ and its job is to think, and whatever it thinks up, I can just simply ignore it, like I do many many times. So for example, if my brain tells me to eat a snake, I probably wouldn't do that, right? So these are learned responses, and then you can easily unlearn them. You can easily see that you are separate from the brain, you as the consciousness, and you can choose better things from your life. Secondly, there's journaling, which is more specific, more narrow, in at least in the way I use it, and I find that it's great for just writing out ideas and seeing, okay, my brain has given me like 20 ideas because I asked it to give me like 20, 30 ideas or whatever, and I have seen these ideas, I've combined them a little here and there, and I found that something I found to be very, very hard is actually medium difficulty, or perhaps even very low difficulty, and I just hadn't given it the thought. I just hadn't given it the amount of focus required to get better results at it, to actually see it for what it is, not some emotional hydra or monster built around it, right? It's bringing things into the light and actually seeing that there's not a monster in the closet or cupboard, but instead there's just a teddy bear and it wasn't weird lighting. Lastly, there's walking, which I really, really like, and I think you should just get out of the house at least one time a day because it will bring you a lot of clarity. It will actually get you to touch grass. Like people make jokes about that, but it actually improves your life. It actually improves your mental health and whatnot. So I definitely think that you should. And getting a dog has been a boon in that because I really want to love him and really want to make take good care of him. So as a result, I actually get out of the house too. I get some play time with him and whatever, and that has overall made me a happier individual. Another, yeah, I mean, those are the big three. You don't need anything else. There's different kinds of meditation, so that depends on your goals. For example, Wim Hof, which is a breathwork technique for getting better tolerance of the cold, could be useful for you. Or perhaps if you have problem with tiredness, you could try something like NSTR or Yog Nidra, which is, for a lack of better words, it helps you gain mental energy and remove lethargy in a very quick time, and it works if you have, let's say, some sexual problems. There's also some meditations for that. There's some meditations for anxiety, some meditations for reducing your natural depression or whatever. And you wouldn't ever find any of these things if you just leave it to the algorithm, because the algorithm works on negativity. The algorithm will just continue feeding you slop, it will continue feeding you some bullshit comedy in which you laugh or even just smirk for a second and then just move on, or it will feed you some even worse bullshit. The thing that I suggest that you do is actually just plan out some time to be fucking bored. Maybe lock yourself in your cupboard or whatever in the complete dark without any phone, without anything, and just set a timer for 30 minutes and then just sit. Do something like that without any light, without anything, without anywhere to run away from your mind. And you will see that your thoughts are actually useful. So one thing which used to be very difficult for me is maths, right? Or even just studying in general. But when I started breaking it down and actually started thinking about it or researching about it, I found it to be actually very, very easy. So let's take the example of math, as I said. I would find trigonometry really, really hard as an exam. I would find trigonometry really, really hard. So what I would do is firstly see what kind of subchapter I was doing. So let's say Pythagoras, or how it relates to differentiation or something, and then I would see what kind of exercises I was doing, and then what sort of principles would I apply in that. What type of things do I need to do? Okay, let me do some basic things here and there. Let me do some basic equations. I will do them, and then I will apply them in the question sheet that there is. I will check my answers. I will see if I scored the certain amount that I wanted to score, if I got all of them right or whatever. And I see that I got 50% of the right, 50% of the wrong. I'm like, okay, let me see what I did wrong. Let me see how I got things wrong, and then just redo all of the wrong ones and actually get them to the right answer, and then do them again, and then again. And after like 3-4 times, I've gotten the principles in my head to the point that I can easily score 100% in this sub part of the study. And this is just one example, right? But for example, let's say in the gym, I was doing all of these things, looking at all of these YouTubers like Natural Hypertrophy, Jeff Nippert, Pioneer, and whatever else, and they were all talking about this is the way that you should train, that is the way that you should train. So what I did, rather than just like rather than just acting like a monkey and just looking at all directions, is see what my lack points were, see where I was lacking, and then acted around that. So what this meant is, let's say I had a lack of muscle or I had a lack of strength, I would train according to that. If I had lack of cardiovascular ability or a lack of stretching ability or a lack of endurance ability or mobility or anything else, I would then train that. Then I would move on to the different thing. Then I would get the thing I was training or improving to like a maintenance level, and then I would move on to the other thing, other thing, other thing, other thing. And that is how I would approach training and gotten results. I've just yapped on, and I do apologize for that, but I am reminded of something which Malkotor said. It's this character from Warhammer 40,000, and planning is the way that we have made sure that the future has gone on the right direction, even when there's 1,000 strands of potentialities, but we don't know all of them. We can't see all of them. We can't control all of them, but we can control our own actions. We can control what we do, how many people we influence in what a manner, and because of that, humanity has gotten to the point that it has. It's something which really struck out to me because what he said, what he realized was that we, as we are right now, are lacking. And when we start moving, when we still plan things around it in a method to improve, in a method to still gain, in a method to still make progress, is when we will get some progress. Even with all of the things that could potentially go wrong, we will also further plan contingency around that. And that's how we've gotten the society that we have today. That's how we've improved it. That's how we've gotten the internet and so many good other things. But these, of course, come with a cost. For example, staying too much on social media will worsen your mental health, will give you bad outcomes, will make you less bored, which, as we discussed, is important. And the best way to get plans, to get results, is to be bored. That's the thing I will leave you with, and I hope that you make it through. Cheers.